Welcome. Welcome to my home. You can see that I've got my Christmas decorations up over here, and they've been up for a few weeks now. I've seen more and more people putting their Christmas decorations up early. Usually we wait for this weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, to put up our decorations, but they came out a few weeks ago because we needed some joy. We needed some hope. We needed some positive anticipation. And I think part of this is because our sense of time has become skewed over the last 7 months of dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. We've had to navigate life in a new way. We've had to deal with school shutdowns and buildings closing, stay-at-home orders, restricted social gatherings, economic issues, constantly changing information and guidelines, isolation, loneliness, and so much more. I invite you to add to this list in the comments below. What have you been dealing with? What changes has this pandemic brought on your life and the way you spend your time? Time has become a fuzzy concept. We long for the future, but all the days blur together. This weekend, we begin that holiday season marathon from Thanksgiving to New Year's. And today we also begin a new church season, the season of Advent. And this marks the beginning of the new year in the church. Typically, we're not celebrating the new year for another month at the end of December. And all those ideas of resolutions and fresh starts and ways to improve our lives in the year ahead. And to be honest, we cannot wait for 2020 to be over, right? It's just been one thing after the other, piling up, adding to our stress, our suffering, and maybe even some despair. And so, since time is weird right now, what if we took advantage of this opportunity to think about our new beginnings, our goals and aspirations for the next year? What if we take today as an early New Year's Eve, since it is the church New Year after all? Our view of time has already been disrupted by the pandemic, so let's lean into it. Let's reorient our view of time and how we choose to live in time in these weeks leading up to Christmas. Today we're going to hear some advice from Mark's Gospel about how to live in this time. This section that we hear is often classified as apocalyptic literature, and that's just a fancy church word that means a revelation. Reverend Dr. Caroline Lewis reminds us that when this kind of literature shows up in Scripture, time is changing, and it's time to pay attention. Not to prepare for the end of time, as this genre is so frequently misunderstood, but to expect the revelation of God in our time. So let's jump into the story. Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he has predicted the destruction of the temple, the place where God is believed to dwell. God lives there, and that's where you go to worship God, to take an offering, to pray. That all happens at the temple. And Jesus has just predicted that the temple will be destroyed. And he's also on his way toward the cross. This is towards the end of the Gospel of Mark. So he's trying to share a message of hope in the midst of confusion and despair and wondering what's going to happen next. He's trying to remind them that even in the midst of all of this, there are signs that they can look for God's unfolding restoration of the world. And then he describes these signs that will tell the disciples how to recognize that this time is near. You can read the whole section in Mark chapter 13. I'm going to focus on verses 32 through 37. Jesus says, "But about that day or hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on the watch. Therefore, keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or at the cockcrow, or at dawn. Or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what I say to you, I say to all, keep awake." So as we enter into Advent, we might be wondering, why are we reading this end times prediction? Aren't we waiting for that sweet, little, chubby, rosy-cheeked baby Jesus? Well, yes and no. We do remember Jesus' birth at Christmas, but we are also waiting and watching for Jesus to show up with us here and now. Advent means coming or arrival. And so think about all the ways you prepare for someone to arrive at your home or for someone to come home from a long journey. Share some of those ways that you prepare in the comments below. I'm going to guess that you probably use your time differently. You probably live in a different way as you anticipate the arrival of someone long expected, someone beloved, someone you're excited and eager to see. Advent is asking us to live in time in a similar kind of way. This is highlighted in much of the music we love at this time of year. One of my favorite Christmas songs, it's an Advent song really, is O Come, Emmanuel. The music is so haunting and the words are a plea to Christ. But have you ever really thought about what we're asking when we sing this traditional hymn? Once again, Dr. Lewis helps us think about this. She tells us that as we move into Mark's Gospel this year, we need to remind ourselves of the theological premise that grounds Mark's story of Jesus. Another fancy way of saying we need to think about the context of the story. There's a link between the baptism of Jesus and the crucifixion of Jesus with the phrase torn apart that frames this gospel. And in the Greek language, which is what the Gospels were written in, the verb schizo is used only twice. Once at the beginning to describe what has happened to the heavens at Jesus' baptism. And then a second time at the end for the temple curtain that tears in half at Jesus' death. And this is no tame opening. Anything that can simply be opened can easily be shut again, and we would never know that something happened. Dr. Lewis warns us that we shouldn't think that God can be let out for a little while and then when we've had enough, put back behind closed doors. No, Mark's Gospel literally rips that image apart. Everything that separates us from God, either the heavens or the Holy of Holies, has been torn asunder because of Jesus Christ. And it can never go back to the way that it was before. At the beginning and the end of this gospel is the conviction that there is no keeping God at a distance anymore. God is not and will not be where we expect to find God. In the exciting and the dramatic, but also in the everyday and the mundane. not far away in the heavens, but close as the seat next to me on the couch. Now, if God is no longer present where we expect God to be, right? Thinking about the first people who heard about this and thinking about the temple, and then us in this time of pandemic when the church building is closed, but we are still the church gathered in a variety of ways. If God isn't in those spaces, then what do we do? Author Barbara Brown Taylor asks us a striking question. She asks, do we build God a house so we can choose to go see God? Do we build God a house in lieu of having God stay at ours? Having God stay at our homes, truly dwelling with God, means that there's an uncomfortable intimacy, right? I mean, think about when you have house guests and you work so hard to let them have their space and privacy, right? Or the first time you're visiting somewhere new and you get all dressed and ready for the day before you even leave the guest room, right? My mom never wanted to host a foreign exchange student, even though we begged her growing up, because she didn't want to have to be on all the time. You know, that same kind of feeling of like, you can't have a bad day and you can't be angry and you can't be irritable. You have to always be kind and polite and a good host, right? I think sometimes we can feel this way about Jesus. Like we have to always be on our best behavior, wearing our nicest clothes and being fully presentable before we leave the guest room, presenting ourselves in the best light, having everything perfectly ready. But that gets really tiring, doesn't it? Sometimes we just want to wear our sweatpants and go without a shower and lay on the couch and watch junk TV. Sometimes we want to let the kids make a mess and not worry about cleaning it up right away. And who wants Jesus to show up in those moments, right? When the house is messy and you're at the end of your rope and you just want to lay on the couch. But here's the thing. The more time we spend with someone sharing the same space, whether it's bumping into one another in the tiny bathroom as you try to get ready all at the same time in the morning, or fighting for space in the kitchen as one person tries to be helpful and unload the dishwasher while the other person is cooking. Not like any of those things happen at your house or my house, right? All those separations start to get torn apart. The more we grow in a relationship, the more willing we are to let the other person see us with slept-on hair, no makeup, and morning breath. We come out of that guest room just as we are for that first cup of coffee. The intimacy of the relationship is transformed just by spending time together. And it's the same way with Jesus. So this week, I'd like to invite you to make a New Year's resolution, a way that you will live differently during this time to support your deepening relationship with Jesus. Your resolution could be something like having communion each week around your dining table with your household. Or it could be trying a devotion for the Advent season. We have resources to help you with both of those available on our website. I'll put a link in the description for you. Maybe you decide to commit to a time of journaling and prayer each day, or taking a walk and talking to God while you walk. Maybe you decide to do a household member's chore for them each week of Advent as an act of service. Whatever it is that you decide to do, bring your whole self to it, not just the Sunday morning version, all dressed up and put together, but the Monday morning and the Friday evening version too. Share with us what you've resolved to do. Tell us in the comments below and on our Facebook posts throughout the week. We want to share life with you, and we want to encourage you in your relationship with Jesus. One last piece of wisdom from Dr. Lewis that will help us remember why we are taking on this new way of living. She says, "We find God in everything it means to be human, even in death. This is the good news of Jesus. No longer will God remain in the heavens or behind a curtain high up on a hill, and to bring a new heaven and a new earth to the moments when the sufferings and despair of our earthly life is more than we can bear." Advent gives us time and space once again to live out this reality. May this Advent be a time of renewal and being made ready for whatever comes next, confident that God is with us, even now. O come, Emmanuel. Amen.